The Mafia does not begin with violence. It begins with belonging. At its core, Mafia loyalty is not about crime. It is about identity. When a man enters the Mafia, he is not just joining an organization. He is stepping into a psychological system that replaces his old self with a new one. They call it family. And that word is not accidental. Humans are wired for connection. From childhood, survival depends on being accepted by a group. The Mafia exploits this instinct perfectly. It offers something many recruits lack: protection, respect, and purpose. To a young man growing up in fear, poverty, or chaos, this feels like salvation. Loyalty begins with gratitude. The boss gives money. The group gives status. The structure gives meaning. Soon, loyalty is no longer a choice. It becomes emotional debt. Psychologists call this identity fusion. When a person's self-worth merges with a group, you are no longer you. You are one of us. Any threat to the Mafia feels like a threat to your own existence. That is why betrayal feels worse than death. In normal society, loyalty is built on trust. In the Mafia, loyalty is built on fear and shared guilt. The initiation ritual is critical. It often involves a symbolic act, an oath, blood, or a crime. This is not tradition. It is psychology. Once someone commits a serious wrongdoing for the group, their mind changes. They cannot leave without destroying themselves. To escape would mean admitting, "I am a criminal. I am guilty. I have no place outside." So the brain chooses the safer path: loyalty. This is known as moral entrapment. You stay loyal not because you want to, but because leaving feels impossible. The Mafia also redefines morality. Right and wrong are replaced by us and them. Helping the family is good. Hurting outsiders is acceptable. Questioning orders is weakness. Over time, this creates a closed psychological world. Members stop thinking like individuals and start thinking like extensions of the boss's will. The group becomes the source of truth. Law becomes irrelevant. Society becomes hostile. Only the Mafia feels real. Even language changes. They don't say boss. They say father. They don't say gang. They say family. This emotional framing is powerful. If the boss is your father, disobedience becomes betrayal. If the group is your family, silence becomes love. The code of silence, known as omerta, is not enforced only with threats. It is enforced with shame and honor. Speaking to police is not just dangerous, it is morally disgusting inside this mental system. And this is the deepest trick of Mafia loyalty psychology. The individual believes he is choosing loyalty, when in reality, his mind has been trained so that no other choice feels safe. From the outside, it looks like blind obedience. From the inside, it feels like survival. This is why Mafia loyalty is so hard to break. Not because members are brave, but because the Mafia does not control bodies first. It controls identity. If identity is the foundation of Mafia loyalty, fear is the cement that hardens it. The Mafia does not rely on constant violence. It relies on the expectation of violence. This is an important psychological distinction. A system that uses endless punishment becomes unstable. People rebel. But a system that uses selective, symbolic punishment creates permanent obedience. One execution, one disappearance, one brutal example. And 1,000 minds learn the lesson without another word being spoken. Fear becomes invisible law. In psychology, this is called conditioning. When disobedience leads to pain and obedience leads to safety, the brain adapts. Over time, fear is no longer external. It becomes internal. The member does not need to be threatened. He threatens himself with imagined consequences. This is how the Mafia turns free men into self-policing prisoners. Punishment in the Mafia is not random. It is ritualized, public enough to be known, private enough to be terrifying. The goal is not justice. The goal is memory. Everyone must remember what happens to traitors. The story travels faster than bullets. But fear alone is not enough. The Mafia pairs fear with reward. Loyalty is reinforced through money, protection, and status. A loyal soldier gets respect. A loyal soldier gets power. A loyal soldier feels important. This creates a psychological trap known as intermittent reinforcement. The same mechanism used in gambling addiction. Sometimes you are rewarded, sometimes you are punished. You never know which one is coming. This unpredictability strengthens obedience. The brain becomes obsessed with approval from authority. The boss's mood becomes the weather of your entire life. One smile means safety. One silence means danger. Soon, loyalty becomes anxiety management. The Mafia also destroys alternative sources of security. Members are encouraged to cut ties with outsiders. Family, old friends, and normal society become liabilities. This isolates the individual. When something goes wrong, there is nowhere else to go. The Mafia becomes the only shelter in a hostile world. This is classic psychological captivity. Another powerful tool is humiliation. Disobedience is not only punished physically, it is punished socially. A member who questions orders is mocked, degraded, or treated as weak. Shame is often more powerful than fear. Humans will endure pain to avoid social rejection. So the lesson becomes clear. To belong, you must obey. To survive, you must be loyal. Over time, the member's nervous system adapts to danger. Violence becomes normal. Threats become background noise. What once caused fear now feels routine. This is called emotional desensitization. The person does not become fearless, he becomes numb. And numbness is useful. A numb mind does not question. A numb mind follows orders. A numb mind mistakes survival for honor. This is why Mafia loyalty looks so absolute from the outside. It is not built on courage. It is built on a carefully engineered environment where fear and reward shape behavior every day. The Mafia does not need to watch its members all the time. Its members watch themselves. By the time someone considers betrayal, the greatest threat is no longer the boss. It is the voice inside their own head saying, "You cannot leave. You do not exist without us." Mafia loyalty looks unbreakable, but psychologically, it is fragile. Because loyalty built on fear and identity is not stable. It is a pressure system. and all pressure systems eventually crack. The same mechanisms that create obedience also create paranoia. When fear becomes the law, trust disappears. Every member knows that betrayal is punished with death, which means every member also knows that anyone could betray to survive. Suspicion becomes permanent. Loyalty turns into performance. You are not loyal because you believe. You are loyal because you are being watched. Over time, this produces a psychological contradiction. The Mafia demands absolute loyalty, but operates in an environment where no one feels safe. This creates chronic stress. The nervous system is always alert. The mind is always calculating risk. Eventually, self-preservation overrides ideology. This is when loyalty begins to rot from the inside. Another breaking point is power imbalance. The boss demands sacrifice, but lives in luxury. Soldiers risk prison or death, while leaders accumulate wealth. At first, this feels justified. He earned it. But psychologically, resentment grows. When reward no longer matches risk, the emotional contract collapses. Loyalty is not moral. It is transactional. When the transaction fails, so does the loyalty. There is also a hidden enemy inside every Mafia organization: time. As members age, their psychology changes. Fear that once felt exciting becomes exhausting. The thrill of belonging becomes the burden of survival. The same identity that once gave purpose now feels like a cage. This is especially true when family enters the picture. A man who once had nothing to lose now has children, aging parents, or a partner. The Mafia's logic, family above all, clashes with biological reality. The brain begins to rank survival differently. Protecting one's blood becomes more important than protecting the organization. This creates the most dangerous thought in Mafia psychology. What if leaving is safer than staying? Betrayal often begins not with courage, but with fatigue. The final collapse usually comes from paranoia at the top. As bosses grow more powerful, they become more isolated. Fear of betrayal makes them ruthless. They punish too quickly. They trust too little. This destroys loyalty faster than weakness ever could. Members no longer feel protected. They feel hunted. Power creates the conditions of its own destruction. Psychologically, the Mafia fails for the same reason all total control systems fail. You cannot build human loyalty on fear forever. Fear demands constant escalation. Violence must increase to stay effective. And when violence becomes routine, it loses meaning. At that point, silence breaks. Informants appear, witnesses speak, empires fall. What looks like betrayal is often psychological escape, a desperate attempt to recover a lost self. When someone turns against the Mafia, they are not just choosing safety. They are choosing a new identity, one that is no longer built on terror. This reveals the deepest truth of Mafia loyalty psychology. It is not strong, it is dependent. Dependent on fear, dependent on isolation, dependent on control. Remove those, and loyalty disappears. The Mafia teaches us something unsettling about human nature. People will give everything to belong. They will even die for an idea of family. But when belonging becomes a prison, the mind searches for a way out, and betrayal becomes freedom. In the end, the mafia does not collapse because of enemies outside. It collapses because of psychology inside. Loyalty creates the empire, but fear destroys it. And that is the paradox of mafia loyalty.